I will now call the hearing to order. My name is Robert Hutchings. I will be chairing the hearing. Excuse me. I guess we'll pause for a minute here. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Robert Hutchings. I'll be chairing the hearing this morning. Joining me on the panel is Mr. Seelan and Ms. Linkletter. Our secretary today is Ms. Rojo. And the assessor representing the Assessment and Taxation Department is Mr. Goulet. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of a respiratory illness such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from this room. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. This morning I've introduced everybody. We will be hearing the applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking on matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by this Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed further to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with this Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following their swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by the questions that the applicant may have, and then the panel members and the applicant's testimony, followed by questioning by the assessor first, and then the panel members again. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, an applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decision based on evidence presented here today. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Bellen, could you swear in the appellant and the assessor, please?
Mark Hodgman.
Good morning, Mr. Reimer.
Morning.
Okay, first property on the docket today is BA number 4631, 2359 Ness Avenue, Unit 2. Mr. Colatriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5365, the roll year 2020 business assessment under appeal from April 1st, 2018 reference date. This is a McDonald's restaurant and the business assessment ID 4631. The total annual rental value under appeal, $45,480. Total area of the premises, 1,162 square feet. We do actually have our recommendation here based on previous agreements on rents that we had done for some of the McDonald's throughout the city. The revision is based on a reduction to the rent, and the revised annual rental value that I'm recommending, I think it's a joint recommendation, $38,880. So I can run through my comps if you guys like.
Yeah, we're in agreement, Mr. Chairman, with that figure.
Okay, thank you both. The rec is 38,880 based on revised rental value. Okay. And the appellant is accepting. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
No. Chair.
Carrie?
I just had a question, just wanted some clarification. You said that this was based on the previous rent and over like all of McDonald's?
Some of them were based on location and but there was a range, and this was kind of for this type of McDonald's location, this was kind of the agreed upon rate. So we've just applied that here to the VA.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, both parties. That concludes 2359 Ness Avenue, Unit 2. Next property on the docket is 3655 Portage Avenue.
Okay, this is file number 19-5576. Once again, we're dealing with 2020 business assessment, the April 1st, 2018 market value. The address 3655 Portage Avenue and the business assessment ID 37208. This is once again a McDonald's restaurant. Here, the McDonald's is located within a Walmart. The same kind of process was applied. There was a range in regards to the rates that we had placed on the McDonald's within the Walmarts. This was the rate that both me and Mr. Reimer had come to agree on. So there is a recommendation to reduce the annual rental value from the $50,222 down to $45,660 based on a reduction in the rental rate. I believe that's a joint recommendation as well.
We are in, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Reimer, you're in agreement?
We are in agreement, yes.
Okay, thank you. Do either panel members have any questions for the appellant or the assessor?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I have no questions. That concludes 3655 Portage Avenue. Next property on the docket is 3421 Portage Avenue, Unit 1. Mr. Colatorio, when you're ready, please.
File number 19-5230, 2020 business assessment for Unit 1, 3421 Portage Avenue, the business assessment ID 5127. This is Cambrian Credit Union. Total rental, annual rental value under appeal, $91,680. Total area of the premises, 3,636 square feet. And this is based on applying a base rental rate of $22.77 to the premise area of 3,636 square feet, and then adding the full occupancy costs for the premise to arrive at the annual rental value under appeal of $91,680. I don't have a recommendation on this file. Basically, what I looked at in regards to rental comparables were other bank rents within that kind of market region of the city. There is some variation on location. However, the range that we see in regards to rental rates ranges from as low as $20 a square foot to as high as $26 a square foot, with two in at $23 a square foot. The model rent being at $22.77 does fall kind of right within that range. So therefore, we're just seeking to have the annual rental value remain unchanged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Reimer, any questions of the assessor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colatorio, the department's aware that there is a lease in place for the septic premise, correct?
I believe so, yes. It doesn't appear to show.
That's what I was wondering. It's not on your.
So sometimes there's difficulties when the way it's entered. Sometimes it doesn't auto pull onto the form, and that's something I lost.
Okay, but we can agree there is a lease in place that we're both.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't have the information in front of me.
No, that's okay. I'll get to that for sure. Just wanted to make sure we were on the same page that way. Okay, we can agree the reference date or the valuation date is April 1 of 2018, sorry, correct?
Correct.
And of your 4 comparables, then the ones closest to the reference date are 2 and 3 on Portage and Court at December 15 and June 16th, correct?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Now, 2025 Corden, that's the Corden Village Shopping Center, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And the comp, though, then closest, in fact, very, very close to the subject, is the second comp at 3647 Portage. That would be closest in geography as well, correct?
Correct.
And that's the one at $20.
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Ms. Linkletter, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, thank you. Do you know the age of this building?
No, I don't have that with me.
And comp 2 on your 3647 Portage, is that also a financial institution?
Yes, these are all bank rents.
Okay, can you tell me what financial institution it is?
Usually we don't share the tenant name because of a privacy concern for the tenants. But yeah, they're all bank rents.
Okay, well, I guess I'm just wondering why that would be $20.
As opposed to like the 23 and 26 that we see for the other comparables. Could be a number of factors. It may be an age situation. It may be, it's also the largest of the comparables that I've shown. So it could be driving, like there is some economies of scale there, the sizes. So that could be a part of it. But as to the actual lease negotiation, obviously I wasn't present. I'm not sure as to the full rationale.
Sorry, and you don't know the age?
I don't have the age of the now.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan, any questions of the assessor?
Yes, I believe one occasion is mall. Are these locations which you have for comparables, or are these?
Yeah, I would say they're similar, but typically we would call these neighborhood shopping centers. The Realty rules that these fall on, and the comparables I try to draw from similar types of properties.
Okay, so it's a similar comparison.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and I have no questions. Mr. Reimer, when you're ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if I could ask the board members and Mr. Colatrujillo to turn to actually initially page 2. So the questions were raised about the comps in the 3647 Portage, and I'd suggest, certainly based on the evidence I'm going to present, that actually a significant factor in this case is the geographical location. There's a reason I believe that one comp of Mr. Colatrujillo's is very much in line with what I'm asking for, and they're within a stone's throw of each other. Just for clarity, the neighborhood shopping center, that's of course, as you can see in the photo on page 2, that's what this would be classified as. 2025 Corden, I'm familiar with, that's the Corden Village Shopping Center. That's a much more substantial mall, anchored by Safeway, and certainly would be in a different category. I'd suggest 3900 Grant, I believe, if it's the one I'm thinking of, and Mr. Colatrujillo, if I'm wrong, feel free to let me know, but I believe that's a mall with significantly larger than the subject as well. 694 St. James Street will be right by Polo Park, of course, which is a high traffic retail area. So the comp in my questioning, I'd suggested at 3647 was by the most comparable to the subject, and I'd still maintain very strongly that that's the case. And the $20 rate is consistent with actually the rate being achieved for this premise, I should say. So as you can see on page 2, this is an end cap unit in a neighborhood strip at 3421 Portage. Ms. Linkletter had asked about the age of the building. So if we turn to page 4, this is the strip mall is located at the corner of Portage Avenue and Cavalier Drive, and the mall was constructed in 1985. So it's, it's getting on in years, but it's in good condition. We're certainly not suggesting that it's in poor condition or sort of anything like that. Premise area is 3,636 square feet. So to the bottom of page 4, and this was my question, Mr. Colatrujillo, the subject was leased as of the reference date at a net rent of $19.60 per square foot, and that was based upon a 5-year renewal commencing in December of 2014. The confirmation of the lease rate under the renewal is attached, and confirming that $19.60 rate. Now that rate is certainly within the range that we're showing in our chart on, excuse me, towards the bottom of page 4. Our range is actually quite similar overall to the range presented by the department of between $18 and $24. But certainly we believe the best evidence of market value, given that this is a renewal that was negotiated right at the end of 2014, basically going into 2015, that represents the best evidence of the subject and is also consistent with the other suburban rates I've presented, along with 3647 Portage that Mr. Colatruvio has presented. So applying that 1960 rate, if we go to page 5 then, I'm sorry, I've got 2075 on there. So apparently I'm asking for 2075 a square foot for reasons that I can't quite explain, but I'm gonna go with it. So we're gonna go with 2075 a square foot for an annual rental value of 84,300. And I'm going to leave that that chart as it is and ask for that to be applied, again, well within the range that we're both suggesting. The confirmation of the net rent is located at page 9 of our materials. This was an email, some email correspondence between my contact at this client and myself. And at the top of that, you can see the new rent was 1960, expiring December 15th, 19. That was in response to my question. The previous 5-year term was at $17.80 a square foot, so there was a bump of nearly $2 in that 5-year renewal term, and that's what they were paying. Now, as far as the comparables I've presented, starting at page 11, these are the photographs of the comparables I've got. So Q8, and again, it's a NCAP unit. And you can see the institution's name there. Index number 2 is actually at the south end of the city in a neighborhood strip that's anchored, in that case, by a Sobeys. You can see the bank there. Index number 3, Q8, and another NCAP unit in Tyndall Market. Index number 4, probably one of the least comparables. It's downtown on Broadway. Index number 5, another NCAP unit on Henderson Highway. And then the final index on McPhillips being not an NCAP unit, but within a strip mall. So we're asking for the reduction this morning to 84,300 based on the totality of the evidence. Thank you.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mark, do you have any questions of the assessor? Pardon me, the applicant?
No questions.
Okay. And I have no questions either.
I have no questions, Mr. Chair.
That's okay.
Sorry, I'm hearing different voices, but I'm kind of freezing here a little bit, so I didn't know who would answer. Okay, thank you, Mr. Seal. With all due respect. Okay, so any requirement for summary by either party?
No, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes 3421 Portage Avenue, unit number 1. Next property in the docket is 1615 Regent Avenue West.
Mr. Chairman, if I can advise that I'm asking for a 54-1 confirmation if we want to expedite this one.
Okay. So, Mr. Reimer, you're requesting confirmation of the value at, could I ask you what the value is, please?
The value that I show, I believe, is 50,100.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the panel members? Sorry, I can't hear you, Bella.
Mark should read this information onto the record, please.
Sure. If you'd like me to read it onto the record.
Yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, so we're dealing with file number 19-5624. This is unit 400B, 1615 Regent Avenue West, and the business assessment ID under appeal 33626. The total annual rental value under appeal is $50,100, and we're seeking no change in the annual rental value. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So that concludes 1615 Regent Avenue West, Unit 400B. Next property on the docket is 1609 Regent Avenue West.
All right, file number 19.
Yeah.
File number 19-5203. Once again, 20 business assessment in April 1st, 2018 market value. The address here, Unit 1 at 1609 Regent Avenue West. The business assessment ID 31207 is a Assiniboine credit union. Total annual rental value under appeal $118,260. Total area of the premises 3,391 square feet. We do actually have a recommendation here that is based on flow through from the Realty agreement for this property. The recommendation is to reduce the annual rental value to $99,840 based on a reduction in the rental rate. And I believe that's a joint recommendation.
We are in agreement, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Any questions from the panel members?
No questions, thank you.
You, Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, and I have no questions. So, Mr. Cotriglio, you're recommending $99,840, and Mr. Reimer is in agreement with that recommendation.
Indeed.
Thank you. That concludes 1609 Regent Avenue West, Unit 1. Next property in the docket is 125 Goulet Street. Mr. Cotriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. File number 19-5226. The 2020 business assessment under appeal. The address here, 125 Goulet Street. The business assessment ID 2648. This is a Royal Bank of Canada. And the total annual rental value under appeal, $119,760. Total area of the premises, 4,716 square feet. Again, we do have a recommendation that comes as a flow through from the Realty arrangement. And the recommendation is to reduce the annual rental value to $110,580 based on a reduction in the rental rate.
Thank you, Mr. Cotriglio. Mr. Reimer, any comments?
We are in agreement.
Okay. So that rec is accepted by the appellant at $110,580. Mr. Seelan, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. And I have no questions. So that concludes 125 Goulet Street. Next property in the docket is 15 Marion Street.
And again, for the information of the board, Mr. Chairman, we're requesting a 54-1 in this case. So,
yeah, I'll read it on, but
yeah, please.
File number 19-5643, full year 2020. The address is 15 Marion Street. The business assessment ID 2822. This is a Boyd auto body and glass. The total annual rental value under appeal, $54,300, and total area of the premises 595 square feet. We're requesting no change in the assessed value for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I have no questions. That concludes 15 Marion Street. Next property in the docket is 17 Marion Street. Mr. Cotriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. This is file number 19-5226. This is a 2020 business assessment appeal. The address 17 Marion Street, and the business assessment ID 2824. A Domo gas station. The total annual rental value under appeal $50,220, and the total area of the premise 398 square feet. The Annual rental value is calculated based on a base rent of $123.66 cents a square foot. And occupancy costs have been applied to the full premise area to arrive at the annual rental value under appeal, $50,220. The rental comparables that I've provided, the first two are reported to us this way. So they're reported as the we call Kiosk area. A lot of these gas stations are actually leased on a land lease arrangement. So in some instances, they don't really report an area of the actual improvement. For the first two that you see for the rental comparables, they do report an area. So those are the rents that you see, 146, 34 a square foot on the first one and 130 on the second one. The other two, these are worked back from the land arrangements. So basically we use the city's record for the area and we calculate the rent based on the premise area that we have on file. So again, the rents are fairly high. In one instance, $375.74, and in the other instance, $150.46. So I don't have a recommendation on this file. The rate that's applied by the model does kind of fall within the range. It is a little bit larger than some of the comparables. Again, there's a range for these and the rents are fairly high. So we're seeking no change in the annual rent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer, any questions of the assessor?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We can agree, Mr. Colatrubio, what we're dealing with here. The subject is a gas bar and your comps are all gas bars, correct?
Correct.
So the actual area, for instance, of a 123-foot kiosk, the kiosk area in and of itself it does not in any way drive the value for these locations. Can we agree on that part?
Yeah, like typically it's the land area. Like the operation is contingent on having land.
Right. Well, having land and having the volume, the gas volume to justify the operation.
Correct.
Okay. So actually, probably a better proxy, and we've run into this, a better proxy would be the number of pumps, which would be an indication of the business that the operator expects to do, and therefore the amount of revenue they're willing to pay for the site. That's probably a fair assumption, correct?
I've never undertaken that analysis.
Okay, I'd suggest that's a pretty good proxy, but we'll discuss that, or I'll discuss that shortly. But given that the rate per square foot based on kiosk area, I believe, is quite misleading. So let's just briefly, the subject then, as you have the base ARV in the middle of the page now, so the base rent the department, or I guess the model, has put on this location is $49,217, right?
Correct, yeah. And that's based on a rent of $123.66.
Sure, but again, fundamentally, we're talking about the site and the
correct, yeah,
gas.
correct.
So that's $49,200. Okay, and this is a dome. We can agree this is a domo location.
Correct.
And it's got 4 single pumps. I don't know if you're aware of that, but did you know it had 4 single pumps at this
I
location?
didn't go count the stuff.
I'd suggest that is really important, and again, we'll talk about that in a minute. So of the comparables, then, I'm very familiar with the first two, 1032 Marion and 849 Lila. Those are also domo operations, correct?
Correct.
So very, very comparable to the subject.
Correct.
Okay.
Just a bit smaller in size.
But in kiosk size.
Correct.
Okay, that's important here. So for the edification of the board, because I'd ask the board to put very little stock in the rate per square foot, it just doesn't provide a meaningful measure. But we can agree then, Mr. Colatrubio, that for Marion, the actual annual rent being achieved from this domo is $18,000 per year, correct? If you do the math, and feel free to do the math if you want, but I'm quite sure it's 18,000.
Sure. I'll agree with you on it.
Okay. And 849 Lila, also a domo, that's $26,000 per year, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
Okay. And then the third one, 1883 Portage, is that a domo? I'm not entirely sure what that one is.
Yeah, our records show that it is the same brand name as the other.
Okay, so that one is at $37,950 on Portage Avenue.
Correct.
Okay. Now, 1625 Keniston, I was thinking about that. That's got to be the Safeway gas kiosk, right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, I'm not as familiar with 1883, but I know 1032 Marion and 849 Leela, and if you don't know, that's fine. But I'm suggesting to you, and let me know if you don't know or if you agree, that Marion and Leela each also have 4 single pumps at those locations.
Yeah, I don't know the count.
Okay, and in terms of the Safeway, that's got, as I recall, at least 6, I've been there a number of times, at least 6, if not 8 double pumps. Were you aware of that?
Again, I didn't count the pumps.
Okay, so much higher. But then, so just theoretically then, Mr. Colatrulio, with the number of pumps, and if you've got 6 or 8 double pumps versus 4 single pumps, that's probably a very good indicator of the traffic that's expected to be going through that operation, correct?
Correct. It could also be tied to the land area that they occupy. So,
Sure. I mean, sure. If they're restricted in land area, that certainly, I would agree that would be a factor. But I guess I'd suggest they wouldn't set up a land area that was going to constrict them that way. And you were aware, and again, you weren't involved with it, I know, but you're aware that there was a realty assessment hearing and decision on this property, part of which is this gas bar, correct?
yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Ms. Linkletter, any questions of the assessor?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I have no questions either. Mr. Reimer, when you are ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Page 2, please. So this is the Domo gas bar that's located at Dominion Shopping Center. So it fronts just where, I guess it would be Marion Street meets up with St. Mary's Road. It's at the junction there, just on the south of the Red River. So we've got a request this morning for this premise from 50,220 to 32,760. So if we turn to page 4, the market rent, and I'll skip down to that. I've certainly, as you can tell by my questioning, I am absolutely convinced that kiosk size in and of itself has virtually nothing to do with the rental value for the site. The fact that you're going to have a little bit to sell more slightly overpriced drinks or chips or what have you, that's not the driver of value. The driver of value relates to the volume of gas that you're going to put through at these locations. That in turn typically is going to be a function of when they're looking at what they're going to put into it, a function of how many pumps and how large the actual gas operation is. In the case of it, and Mr. Colatrulio is very forthright in his comments, and I understand he hasn't looked at the pump issue. We pay very close attention to that. In the cases you can see of the subject, this is a location with the old 4 single pumps, and certainly is one of the very much smaller, notwithstanding the cut size of the kiosk, one of the smaller operations in the city of Winnipeg, as are the 2 comps that Mr. Colatrulio has on Marion and Leela. Interestingly enough, I believe we also have those same comparables in our materials. In fact, we do. So what I'm suggesting this morning, if you go to the market rent segment on page 4, the realty assessment was reduced from 16,715,000 to 16,219,000. The realty assessment was essentially for half of Dominion Shopping Center, and it's the half on which this kiosk is located. Obviously, the kiosk value in and of itself was very, very minor in the scheme of things, but it is, I'd suggest, an important consideration in that what we had suggested at the realty assessment hearing for the gas bar operation, what we suggested in our submission was a net rent of $30,000 per annum. That's higher than the contract rent. The contract rent in this case is $24,000, but we factor that up to 30. And this is the important part. And in fairness to Mr. Colatrulio, because of the different moving parts, I understand why, as opposed to some other cases where he said this is a function of the realty agreements, he wasn't able to do so here because the DOMA is such a small part of the bigger assessment. But what I can tell you with absolute certainty is certainly in our valuation based on the reduced value ordered by the board and some minor adjustments, But one of the most significant adjustments within that reduction was the gas bar rent that we applied at, actually bumped it up a little bit to $31,840. I had understood that that was a figure that both the assessor, not Mr. Colatrulio, but the assessor on the realty assessment appeal and myself were agreeing to. But be that as it may, because it was part of a bigger overall assessment, I'm not going to suggest or put words into the assessor's mouth as to what they did at the end of the day. I can tell you with certainty that's what we did, because we were convinced for this operation that the market rent applied by the department was far too high. So we're suggesting $31,840 on page 5 now. And that's based on this. And again, the kiosk area works out to $80 a foot, but the area of the kiosk is not something I'm keying in on, other than to add the occupancy costs to that area. So that then comes in at a revised annual rental value of $32,760. Going through our attachments, just to make the board aware of the context in which I'm providing these comments, on page 9, the Board of Revision order for the larger property, 15 Marion Street, is attached. And that shows that slight reduction from 16.7 million to 16.2 million roughly. Then going further to page 11. So this is the, sorry that you have to go like this. This is the valuation that we had. And again, I stress it's what we have in our records for the Board of Revision revised lower number. And this second column from the right is SKP, and that is the Domo gas kiosk valuation that we've got using the rent of $31,840. So that's what we've applied this morning. And if you then turn to our page 24, please. So on page 24, this is our submission to the board with respect to the Domo gas kiosk. And again, we've actually got, recall that Mr. Colatrulio's comparables, the first 3 were Domos, and they range from 18,000 to 37,950. That range, and I'm leaving aside the Safeway, I'm suggesting in no uncertain terms, Mr. Chairman, that Safeway gas bar with many more double pumps and that location is far superior to the subject. So I'm not placing really any weight on that one. But the 18,000 to 37,950 again is actually very similar to our range that we show in the chart on page 24, which is from 25,200 up to 36,000. I can tell the board that comparables number 1, 3, and 4, so that's Academy, Leela, and Henderson, those are Domo operations. And Leela is, of course, the same comparable that Mr. Colatrulio has provided. So we've got the one on Mandalay is not a Domo operation. And as you can see, actually on that one, it's not listed there, but in that one, the leasable area, just for the board's reference, I'm talking about the kiosk size being irrelevant. That rent is $31,500, but the area shown for the actual building there is 5,589 square feet. The issue there, though, is that includes both the retail area and the car wash, but importantly, that has just 2 double pumps. So actually it's the equivalent of 4 single pumps driving that rent of $31,500. Sort of reinforcing that the number of pumps and whether they're single or double pumps is, we believe, a very good proxy for the rental value for the particular location. So again, we had suggested $30,000 as we show on page 24. We ended up at $31,580 and we are asking the board this morning to give effect to what we believe to be the realty order, but more importantly, certainly giving effect to the the market indicators for operations of this size with the 4 single pumps and the annual rental value as indicated based on $31,580 and with occupancy costs $32,760. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Mr. Colatrulio, any questions of the appellant?
Yeah, I do have some questions. So I guess we'll start with the board order on page 9. So the way that I'm reading the board order, it does look like a recommendation was accepted from the Assessment and Tax Department. Is that correct?
Indeed.
And was that based on a particular workup that was presented by the assessor?
The assessor didn't present a workup, but my understanding in discussions, because I was the one handling it.
Yeah.
So my understanding in discussions with the assessor is what we were agreeing to is what's set forth on page 11.
Okay. Now on page 11, so I guess page 24 for the Domo gas bar, we show the vacancy 4%. The summary, I guess, is all on page 11, correct? For all of the parameters for your interpretation of that board order?
Yes.
So across, I'm seeing NSC, NSC 40S, SKP, and PKL. Vacancy 4% across that, but on the left-hand column, there's 3.83. Is that
3.86? That's a function. If you see Mr. Colatriglio, the parking lot, the very last column, PKL.
Yeah.
That has a vacancy because that's calculated a little differently. It has a vacancy of 0.
Okay, so just
the
average.
exactly the weighted average of those is 3.83.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to be clear, the management / other $ row, that is the 5% management that you guys were seeking on the Realty.
No, actually, in this particular case, we agreed to not include the 5%. So if you see the management other percentage, we settled on the 2% for the 3 income streams, not on the parking. The parking revenue doesn't have any of that applied, so it's 0 in that case.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Seelan, any questions of the appellant?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Yes, just in reference to your page 24.
Yes.
You were giving, I think you indicated that 3 of the lease comparables are domos.
Indeed.
Are they also 4 pumps?
These locations are all the smaller 4 single pumps. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I have no questions. Any requirement for summary from either party? Thank you. Well, that concludes 17 Marion Street. Next property on the docket is 1510 St. Mary's Road, Unit A. Mr. Colatriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. File number 19-5404. Again, we're dealing with the 2020 business assessment. Unit A of 1510 St. Mary's Road, the business assessment ID 50666. And the business name here is Bank of Montreal. The total annual rental value under appeal, $116,700. Total area of the premises, 3,325 square feet. We do have a recommendation that comes as flow through from the Realty. The recommendation here is to reduce the annual rental value to $112,860. And that again is based on a reduction in the rental rate.
Okay, Mr. Reimer, any comments?
We're in agreement.
Okay, thank you. So just to summarize, Mr. Colatriglio, you're recommending $112,860, and Mr. Reimer is in agreement. Any questions from Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
No questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 1510 St. Mary's Road, Unit A. Next property in the docket is 50 Lakewood Boulevard, and that is Unit 120. When you're ready, please, Mr. Colatriglio.
Thank you. It's file number 19-5334. Again, we're dealing with the 2020 business assessment appeal. The address here, Unit 12050 Lakewood Boulevard, the business assessment ID 50274, and the business operating here, Ladco Company Limited. The total annual rental value under appeal, $86,100. Total area of the premises, $3,940 a square foot. I do have a slight recommendation here to reduce the annual rental value to $83,220 based on a reduction in rental rates. And if Mr. Reimer's in agreement, I won't carry forward, but if not, I'll go through my.
I think we should proceed.
Yes, not a problem.
Thank you.
So in regards to the analysis that was conducted here, the three premises that you see for the subject bid are owner-occupied premises. We don't have rents reported for these areas with the 2017 mailer that we would have been looking at for this reassessment cycle. It's two retail units, what I would classify as our standard retail unit. For the first two premises, you see there, Unit 120 and Unit 200. And for Unit 118, it's actually an old vault that I believe that uses storage. So part of the revision that I made was just applying a storage rent to the space as opposed to applying the standard retail rate. So the model did have a slight downward adjustment on the rates there, which has an impact in the overall annual rental value. In regards to rental comparables, we did look at, right within that retail cluster on Lakewood and tried to stay within that immediate area of the subject property. The range is as low as $16.25 a square foot to as high as $27.25 a square foot. They do occupy kind of a mid-range. The total area here is 3,940 square feet. And if you look at the rental comparables that I'm providing, the model rates that are applied, the $19.04, the $19.15, and the $14.24, all kind of fall within the range with the exception of the storage rent, which obviously comes in a little lower than the standard retail rates that you see. I will point out that the second from the bottom comparable it is 1625. That's the low end of the range, and then the high end of the range you're looking is fourth from the bottom, Unit 36, 2725. So again, the recommendation is to reduce the annual rental value to $83,220 based on a reduction in the original rental rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coltiglio. Mr. Reimer, any questions?
Well, the only question I have, Mr. Coltiglio, you're aware there was a realty decision concerning the subject for 2020, correct?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll discuss the rest later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Linkletter, any questions?
Just one. Can I have again your number that you were recommending?
Yes,
Quite intentional.
So it actually shows on the page, but it's $83,220. So when you're looking at that subject,
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have a question.
Yeah, no,
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
So your recommendation is based on what we're doing rental rate?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So there was, I believe, two of the premises where the two retail, the two premises, I applied the same tenant class to get consistent rents for the retail space. And then I changed the tenant class that was applied to the storage space because my understanding of it is a vault, an old vault space that's used for storage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Coltiglio, I'm just looking at your page one with the subject business ID, and then we've got three premise IDs. I think maybe you just kind of detailed it, but so there's three premise IDs. Which ones did you revise?
I believe it was the first and the last that you see there.
Okay. So let's go to premise ID 3548, I guess number one. So that's at 1904. The second one 1915 per square foot, and the third one 1424 per square foot. So what exactly is this? What are these three premise IDs?
Different units within the overall neighborhood shopping center. It's kind of as a strip, so there's multiple CRUs there. The owners have used 3 of those spaces for their own operations, and that's what you see here under this bid.
Okay, I see. So it's owned by one owner, or utilized by one, we'll call them a tenant, I guess.
Correct.
But there's 3 premise IDs, okay. And you said the number 3, I'll call it on that premise ID listing, is it a vault or something you said?
Correct, yeah, correct.
241 square feet, okay, yeah. And it's, is it a bank or, no, am I wrong here?
I'm not sure on the original usage. My understanding, just based on communication with the agents, is that it's a vault area.
Okay. All right. And what is your blended rate for all 3 premise IDs?
Calculate that quickly. So the blended rate would be $18.67 rounded.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all my questions. Mr. Reimer, when you are ready, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And just to clarify, that little area of 341 is what used to be a vault. I mean, now it's just basically used for storage. That's all it can be used. The premises are office premises. They're not retail. This is actually premises that are owned, occupied by LADCO.
Okay.
It's all office, just to be clear. It's not retail. So if we go to page 2, this is the strip mall located at 50 Lakewood, and the units are, as you move towards the back, there's a Mac store in the front, and as you move further west, that would be units that are occupied, plus the vault that are occupied by LADCO, and that's the subject of the appeal this morning. The total area, there's no dispute on that. The total area, including the vault, is 3,940 square feet. Now, my one question to Mr. Colatruglia related to the Realty assessment appeal. So at the bottom of page 4, there was a Realty assessment appeal that was heard by this board in the middle of October 2019. The assessment was reduced from $3,859,000 to $3,733,000. And actually there was 2 components, but the exempt component is not, of course, part of the discussion this morning. But within that, then, what the reasons given by the board was a capitalization rate of 7.5%, the applicant's adjusted net operating income, and adding 5% for the non-recoverable expenses. So if you turn then to page 5, this is our valuation based upon, I did make some adjustments at that hearing to a couple of the spaces, and the adjustments that I made are actually in 2 of the 3 spaces that are the subject of this appeal this morning. So I'm going to go through that in a second. But the valuation that we've got based on the revision ordered by the board is located at page 5. So then within that, and again, the right-hand column is the exempt component. Don't worry about that. It's not part of our discussion this morning. Our premises are located within the NSC column. And if you turn then to page 6, what you'll see is that this is a calculation on the chart at the top of page 6 of the potential net market income for the NSC component. It's $243,977. And I've put a little asterisk beside the 3 units that we're talking about. It's unit 118, which is that vault, unit 120, which is 1,860 feet, and then the very bottom one, which at the time was vacant and has since been occupied by LADCO at $1,450 a square foot for 79 and 39 feet. So what we're asking the board to do this morning is to give effect to these same rents, the $5 for the vault, the $14 for 1,860 feet at unit 120, and the $14.50 per square foot for unit 200 at 1,739 feet, based on those adjusted rental rates that we had applied at the hearing. And that then totals $52,961. That's the sum of the three. So then moving to page 7, when you take those values and sum them and add the occupancy costs, the revised business assessment that we're seeking is $62,580. We move briefly to page 10. Page 10 is the Board of Revision order confirming the reduction, and you'll see there the exempt component actually went up a little bit from 902,000 to 1,103,000, but the taxable portion, and that's the taxable component is what the subject premises, of course, are located within. That taxable component went from 2,957,000 to 2,630,000, and if you recall, Mr. Chairman, that revised value of 2,630,000 is what we're showing on our page 5, just for the board's cross-referencing, so you can see how I got there. Then starting at page 12 is a copy of our Board of Revision submission, and I'll just briefly go to page 18. So page 18 indicates our original submission with the rental rates we're suggesting. And there, in that submission, originally we had $4 for the vault and $12 for the vacant unit now occupied by Ladco. That's the very last entry there. And based on the questioning that Mr. Taylor at that time and the board members had at the hearing, I was in agreement that the $12 in particular should be increased somewhat. So I took that one to $14.50 and I took the vault to $5. And that's how we came in at our revised valuation for the taxable component as ordered by the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Reimer. Mr. Colatrujillo, any questions of the appellant?
Just one question. So page 18, I see the rents that you've applied for the Realty hearing, correct?
Yes.
Is there a reason that the owner-occupied space was given lower rents?
That at the time we went with the rent that was on that Ladco space for the 1,800 feet being full office space, but we didn't go beyond that. Okay.
But they don't report $14, correct?
No, actually, I thought they did. 120. Was I wrong?
Do you have the mailer?
Yeah, actually, I do. So if you go to page, now I've got a number of rentals because vacancy was an issue as well. But let's go to the most recent.
We do report one rent.
So at page 32, Mr. Chairman. The unit 120, that's the large office unit at $14. And again, the unit 200 was vacant. And that's the one where we bumped it to $14.50 for the vacant space. And then the vault. They actually don't show any rent for the vault at all. So we assign a notional rent of $5 for that.
Okay. Now, in regards to owner-occupied space, do we typically use like the book rents that they put for their own space within a mailer?
Well, not without further investigation. Certainly, I thought based on the size, the fact that it was office space and where it was located within the strip, that the $14 made sense. But you can't, I agree, you can't just take it at face value. We applied it and the board accepted that $14 rate for that unit and the $14.50 higher rate for unit 200.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Linklater, any questions of the appellant?
I have no questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Reimer, first of all, is there a lease in place for this?
There's certainly a lease in place, but as Mr. Colatrujillo correctly pointed out, it would be between affiliates. So we didn't rely just on that on the face of it. We looked at what else was going on there to come in. Ultimately, using the $14 because it's office finish and not prime retail location because it's going further back, and then bumping up that vacant area, now part of this business assessment to $14.50.
Okay, and would you mind calculating your blended rate for these three premise IDs?
$13.45, including
Okay.
including the vault space.
Yes, okay. Okay. And you are asking for, I'm just sorry, I'm rolling through your brief here. You're asking the board to revise the value to,
62,580.
there you are. Okay, 62,580, yes. Thank you. Okay. Any requirement for summary from either party?
No, thank you.
Okay. May I suggest a 7-minute break?
We can, although the last one will be very quick if you want.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then we'll continue with 53. That concludes 50 Lakewood Boulevard, Unit 120. Next property is 53 Vermillion Road. Mr. Colatriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. File number 19-5222. Dealing with the 2020 business assessment. The address 53 Vermillion Road. Business assessment ID 34817. This is a CIBC. Total annual rental value under appeal $42,420, and the total area of the premise 1,342 square feet. There is a recommendation here to reduce the annual rental value to $32,220, and this is based on a reduction in the rental rate. Essentially, the original rent was based on your typical bank space. And actually, this is actually just a storage unit for the bank operation, so it's not like a branch location. So therefore, we just applied the standard model retail rate to that for the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Colatriglio. Mr. Reimer?
In agreement?
Okay, you accept 32,220.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the panel members? Mr. Seelan?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Linkletter?
So what is your new price per square foot on this?
So the model applies $21.55, and then obviously the occupancy cost. So the $2.45 for the occupancy costs.
Okay.
So total, I guess, with the occupancy costs included, would be, the number you see up top was the original ARV under appeal, but this would be $21.55 plus the $2.45 to arrive at $24 basically, with the occupancy costs included.
Okay, so what exactly is this space then?
So-
Bigger than a vault, so.
Yeah, correct. So my understanding, based on my communication with the agent and the city's records, was that it is just a regular retail unit. However, the bank doesn't use that space as a branch location. They use it as a storage location.
Thank you. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Carrie. And I have no questions. So that concludes 53 Vermillion Road. And last property on the docket is BA ID 1129, file number 19-5239. Mr. Colatriglio, when you're ready, please.
Thank you. It's file number 19-5239, again, 2020 business assessment appeal. There is no civic address for this property. The business assessment ID is 1129. My understanding is that this is located kind of at the complex of 2073 Pembina Highway. This is a Royal Bank of Canada drive-up ATM with a small vestibule. The total annual rental value under appeal, $39,540. There was a change that I made to the leasable area. Basically, when I measured the space, it looked like it was initially entered based on the roof line dimensions. There are some empty space where the entry is to the vestibule. That area was removed, and that's why you're seeing a correction here to the leasable area. The recommendation is to reduce the annual rental value to $34,080, and that's based on that correction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reimer,
You in agreement?
okay, accepted that 34080 based on change in physical, the plan area of that kiosk. Is that right, Mark? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mr. Steelan, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Carrie, any questions?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
I have no questions either. Thank you. That concludes that BA ID number 1129, and that concludes our hearing today. Thank you both for appearing.
Thank you very much.